I need to begin with a brief reference to last week's sermon and the long quote from Aristotle. If people thought that I was somehow criticizing young people by using that quote, that was not my intention at all. And if you heard it that way, I am truly sorry. The reality is that the Christmas story is about young people. Mary was a teenager. Joseph was barely 20, if that. The shepherds were teenagers. So the Christmas story really is a story about young people. But to this morning's sermon. And our theme, our couplet for this morning, wholeheartedness, not distraction. I don't know how many of you watched the movie, have ever seen the movie Up, but from the movie Up you learn the following truth about life. I'm using this somewhat facetiously. If you were ever chased by a pack of dogs, all you need to do is yell squirrel, and they'll go chase the make-believe squirrel. In our lives, there are all kinds of squirrel moments that distract us from the task about which we are about. It's easy to be distracted. We live in a world where distractions come upon us in all kinds of shapes and forms, and certainly you only need to watch the media to watch that happen, or go to the mall. The same thing happens there. Mary is an example of wholeheartedness in the midst of what could have been deeply distracting times for her. The angel Gabriel comes to her and says, "Hail, you who are highly favored." One of the few times an angel comes to someone and the first words out of the angel's mouth are not, "Don't be afraid." Mary is a teenager in a little town that doesn't matter, used to having not many people besides her family notice her. From an unimportant place, an unimportant person, and here an angel comes to her and says, "Hail, you who are highly favored." And she's wondering what on earth is going on. And then the angel begins to unpack why he's brought those words. Describes that she will become the mother of the Messiah, mother of the Son of the Most High God. And Mary's practical. She has a very practical question to ask the angel, and it's this: if I'm a virgin, how is this going to be? The angel unpacks how that will happen. And at this point, Mary has a choice. She can push back against the angel and say, "I need more definition, I need more explanation." In other words, she could run into the distractions. Or she could say, "I will do this. I'm prepared to make this commitment." And as we know, she takes the latter choice. But it would have been so easy to go into the distractions. Not just about how it's going to happen, but also what am I going to tell Joseph? What am I going to say to my parents? What are the villagers going to think? How am I going to deal with the town gossips? All of that could have distracted her. But none of them do. And she simply says, "I am the Lord's servant. Let it be to me as you have said." The die is cast. A tangent for a moment. Because every time I get close to this text, people either ask me or I can read the questions above their heads saying, "Does he believe in the virgin birth?" I do. I do believe in the virgin birth. I'll give you two reasons why I do. First, how do we know about this dialogue between Mary and the angel Gabriel? Mary must have told someone, right? In fact, what we have before us is Mary's account of what happened. She believed it was a virgin birth. So if we're going to question that, if I'm going to question that, then I'm questioning whether Mary told the truth. Second, as the angel clearly says to Mary, there is nothing that is impossible with God. Now, I admit that in my life I haven't seen big impossible like this, but I've seen impossible. I've seen God do things that were unpredictable, impossible, beyond imagining. If God can do the little impossible, why can't God do the big impossible too? And so I'm convinced there's a virgin birth. But back to Mary. Because Mary doesn't just say, let it be to me as you have said. She then sings this song, this amazing song, which we read responsively together. And the first quarter, first third of that is about how God has blessed her, how God has moved in her life to bring about transformation. And it so easily could have tipped to be, aren't I cool? Aren't I wonderful? But she catches herself with that line, holy is God's name. And realizes in that moment that this is, yes, that she is blessed. Yes, God is working in her life, but this isn't about her. It's about God. It's about what God is doing, what God is about. And she points to the fact that God is in the business of turning the world upside down. In particular, throwing down the wealthy, the elite, the powerful, and raising up the lowly and the humble. And God's in the business of doing that. God's in the business of using the lowly and the humble, the insignificant, the unimportant. Again and again, God has done that in our world, bringing about that kind of transformation. Why? Because pride is spiritually toxic. Pride is spiritually toxic. To be wholehearted, to say what she says, to be as focused as Mary is, to say, I am the Lord's servant, let it be to me as you have said, requires humility. Requires a commitment to letting God lead, God be, God do. That kind of wholeheartedness, as opposed to distractions that might make us think that it's about us. Let me just give you, I am a church historian, so you're going to get here for 5 minutes, maybe 4 minutes, a run-through of 2,000 years of church history.
Okay, here we go.
Go. So, Jesus takes 12 guys, disciples, many of whom are single fisher people, who are nobodies, who are nothings, and uses them to transform the world. God took a group of men and women in Egypt who went out to the desert on the western edge of Egypt, who lived alone as monks. These are the desert fathers and mothers. And through them the church was saved. People who didn't matter, who lived nowhere. In the 13th century, God transformed the church through a young man who gave it all up and became a traveling preacher, and we call him St. Francis. In the 16th century, God used a professor at a too-big university in a nowhere town in Germany to transform the church, and his name was Martin Luther. God used two brothers who had been thrown out of the church in England to go preach in open fields to coal miners, and thousands came to faith. And those are John and Charles Wesley. God moved in the hearts of a husband and wife with profound concern for those who lived on Skid Row. That's William and Catherine Booth, and that's the Salvation Army. God used a black church in inner city Los Angeles, meeting in a burned-out warehouse with only mud for a floor. That's Azusa Street. That's the Pentecostal movement, 1905. God used a broken woman, rejected by her family with no resources, in Taiwan, who went back to her people in the midst of the Japanese occupation and preached the gospel, and thousands came to faith, which has been described as the Pentecost in the Taiwan. That's Chi Wang. Again and again and again, God uses the insignificant, the unimportant, those who do not matter, the lowly, the humble, who say to God, I am the Lord's servant. Let it be to me as you have said, for his honor and for his glory, and for what he's doing. Now, the danger of that trip through church history is that we say, well, those are the superheroes. Those are the superstars, and I'm not one of them. The fact is that all of them probably said, I'm not one of them either. God's in the business of calling people who are lowly and humble, who think they don't matter, who think they're unimportant, for his honor and for his glory to do his thing. God has placed each of us in unique places that no one else is, with connections and relationships that no one else has. God's given each of us skills and gifts and abilities in that place that no one else has. And he invites us to be his people in those places. Yes, Mary's in a particular time and place and says, I am the Lord's servant. Let it be to me as you have said. We, where we are, the context that we have, the relationships that we have, the skills and abilities that we have been given, our personalities. We too are invited, called by God, and invited to say, I am the Lord's servant. Let it be to me as you have said. Because God's in the business of using people like us, ordinary, everyday people like us, who are prepared to be wholehearted for him. Now, I know if I don't answer this question, Chris will ask me this question. He always wants me to be practical. Or sometimes.
Do what you want.
So, how do we practice being wholehearted? First, we need to keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. The writer of Hebrews tells us that. Keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. Ask ourselves, where is Jesus? What's Jesus going on about? What's he doing? Where is he? Eugene Peterson, the now deceased Presbyterian minister, said that it's not that we bring Jesus to a situation. Jesus is already there. Our task is to look for where he is and say, did you see him? Did you see him? Did you see him? And often we find Jesus not up front, not front and center, but back in a corner with the ignored, with the servants, with those behind the scenes, in hiddenness, doing his thing. Sorry, I need to cheap look at my notes. Second, in terms of being wholehearted, we need to choose what is truly important. The difficult choices in life are not between bad and good. Those usually are pretty clear. The difficult choices in life are between good and best. And if we are going to be wholehearted, sold out for Jesus, saying yes to what he's calling us to, may at times mean saying no to things that actually look really good, but would distract us from the callings in our lives. And third, this one I do well. Follow the passions the Holy Spirit has given you. The Holy Spirit has given us drive, energy, goals, passions, commitments, those things that break our hearts, those things that keep us awake at night as we worry not about us but about the world around us. Those passions we're called to pursue. They help us think about what we are wholehearted for or are called to be wholehearted towards. I don't know how to teach people to be passionate. We can teach skills. But passion is something the Spirit gives us. And if it's moving in you, follow. God invites us to be like Mary, wholehearted, saying, we are the Lord's servants, that it be to us as he has said.